Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from Group 6 with members Rizky Maulidia with ID student 25200 and 88, Tina Priscilia Mareta with ID student 25200 and 90, and Nailil Iza with ID student 25201 and 12. Below, we will explain the material we have discussed. Early school age language development. Metalinguistic ability, the awareness that enables a language user to think about and reflect on language, also becomes well developed during the second age period, the early school age child. During the early school age years, the child refines the conversational skills needed to be a truly effective communicator. This communication development reflects the child's growing appreciation for the perspective of others. Pragmatic development. Narratives. Narratives reflect the storyteller's experience and, as such, are sense-making tools. Conversational abilities. The ability the ability to understand and adopt varying points of view is necessary for successful communication. Narratives, development of narratives. During the school age period, these narratives undergo several changes, primarily in their internal structure. Story grammar development. Story grammar developed from a narrative framework, the internal structure of a story. Narrative difference. Narration varies with context or situation and with the culture of the speaker. Conversational abilities. Language uses. From begins to speak, he or she is able to provide information and to discuss topics briefly. Speaking style. The style switching behavior when talking to peers with parents reported for 4-year-olds. Topic. A school-age child is able to introduce a topic and sustain it through several turns and close the topics. Indirect requests. Indirect requests are first produced in the preschool years. Conversational repair. A school-age child attempts to clarify the conversation through variety or strategies. The didactic terms. By school age, most children can produce didactic terms here, there, correctly. Semantic development. Vocabulary growth. Vocabulary growth is not the same as semantic sophistication or depth of understanding. While new words may increase the size of the child's lexicon, real change comes in interrelated semantic concepts. Semantic classes, synonym, homonyms, and antonyms. These are all part of child's understanding of a word.
Conceptual change. Adult organized language, especially object concept in various ways. Two prominent organizational schemes are taxonomies and terms. Taxonomies are categories of objects that share a common essence, such as trees or tools. Although objects in a category likely share similar perceptual features. Mature taxonomic knowledge includes other aspects, such as functional use or biological essence, that both thematic and taxonomic relations are preserved from an early age. In young children, more abstract taxonomic relations and more fragile and thematic ones in their mental representation. For example, a category such as tools includes objects that look very dissimilar and have several different functions. The fragility of these categories may result in a reliance on more thematic organization when demand are high. As a result, preschoolers switch between organizational strategies depending on the text and context. By age 6, children organize concepts in ways similar to adults, and this organization is based on more than physical similarity. Within 2 years, categorical relation seems to be the preferred method of organization. Over time and with more encounters with the word, thematic knowledge gradually increases. Education may play a part as well. For example, In a decade, adults seem to rely less on taxonomic organization than to children who have completed grade school. With development and education, taxonomic structures strengthen and are less affected by the text or context. Related cognitive processing. During the school years, there appears to be a change in cognitive processing, storage, and retrieval that reflect a shift in categorization. The initial change occurred in elementary school, with a shift from concrete to abstract during adolescence. The increased reliance on linguistic categorization allows the child to process greater amount of linguistic information. During early school years, children show a shift in linguistic processing from reliance on surface to reliance on deep strategies. This shift may mirror gradually decreasing cognitive reliance on visual input for memory and recall, a gradual change from visual encoding by preschooler to overt naming as the dominant memory processing of school-age children. The processing shift may also reflect a child's increasing ability to integrate situational, non-linguistic information with linguistic information. These abilities are needed for effective daily communication. An example is the use of stress or emphasis in sentence decoding. Figurative language. Figurative language is words used in an imaginative sense rather than a literal one to create an imaginative or emotional impression. Figurative language enriches and enlivens our communication and is used to convey information that may be inexpressible or less effectively expressed in literal language. Use is indicative or of higher language function and correlates with adolescents' literacy skills. Conversation, classroom, teaching, and reading use figurative expression frequently. The primary types of figurative language included idioms, metonyms, metaphors, similes, and proverbs. Morphologic development. Among school-age children, language productivity and syntactic complexity are strongly influenced by the type of speaking text and familiarity with the topic. Language development consists of simultaneous expansion of existing syntactic form and acquisition of new forms. A child continues with internal sentence expansion by elaborating the noun and verb phrase. Conjoining and embedding function also expand. Additional structures include the passive form, noun, and verb phrase development. School-age children still have difficulty with some preposition, verb tensing, and plurals. Sentence types. In English, sentences become longer with the addition of more words, embedded phrase, and clauses. Morphologic development. Learning to use a morphological rule begins with the hypothesis that a small set of words are treated in a certain way grammatically. The first use of a morphological marker are probably the result of memorization, acquired one word at a time. This is followed by morphological generalization about phonological marking and meaning past tense. Gradually a child forms a rule. Noun phrases. Within the noun phrase, development continues with additional modifiers and mastery of the pronoun system. With pronouns, a child learns to differentiate better between subject pronouns such as I, he, she, we, and they, and object pronouns such as me, him, her, us, and them, and they use the reflexes such as myself, himself, herself, and ourself. In addition, a child learns to carry pronouns across a sentence and to analyze a sentence to determine to which noun a pronoun refers. For example, a child must perform some complex analysis in order to interpret the following sentence. Mary's mother was very sick. Mary knew that she must obtain a doctor for her. The child must be able to hold more than one dimension of the noun phrase or of an entire clause, and to comprehend or use a pronoun in this place. This procedure is demonstrated in the following sentence. The earth began to tremble shortly before rush hour, reaching full force. 40 minutes later, it was devastating. The distinction between mass and count noun and their quantifiers in accurate and slowly throughout the school years. Mass noun refer to homogeneous, non-individual substance, such as water, sand, and sugar. Count noun refer to heterogeneous, individual objects such as cup, bicycle, and house. Mass noun take quantifying modifiers such as much and little, as in much sand, while count noun take quantifiers such as many and few, as in many cups. Verb phrase. Verb action can be reversed in three ways. 1. Use of the prefix "an." She is throwing her shoe. She is untying her shoe. Number 2. Use of a particle following the verb. Pull on your boots. Pull off your boots. Number 3. Use of separate lexical items. She opened the door. She closed the door.
Okay, next. Sentence types. The cognitive skills needed for comparative relationships develop during the preschool years but must await linguistic development. The comparative relationships, as in as big as, smaller than, and more fun than, is the easiest one for young school-age children to interpret. The cognitive skills needed for comparative relationships develop during the preschool years but must await linguistic development. Older sentential relations, such as passive, are more difficult for school-age children to interpret. In both English and Spanish, sentences become longer with the addition of more words, embedded phrases, embedded clauses. As might be expected, in both English and Spanish, children with low school achievement have less complex syntax. Passive sentences. Passive sentences are troublesome, both receptively and expressively, for English-speaking children in large part because of the syntactic form. English passive sentences, the agent or cause of action and the patient or recipient are reversed. So, in Tarzan was pushed by Trevor, we focus on Tarzan and not on Trevor's act. In another variation, instrument used to complete an action, as in ball, becomes the focus and the ball was thrown by mommy. American English-speaking adults use the passive form infrequently. As you might imagine, then 5-year-old children rarely produce full passive sentences. Children not truly comprehend some forms of passive sentences until about age 5.5. Prior to this age, children use extra-linguistic strategies such as contextual support to interpret passive sentences. General children young to interpret children in both English and Spanish passive when sentences become longer with the addition of more words, embedded phrases, embedded clauses. The picture was painted by as Mary might be expected. In both English and Spanish, children with low school achievement have less complex syntax. Children form passives with cat and be quiet distinctively. Although use of the past tense ed is acquired by most children by age 4, development of the participles ed and en used in passive sentences takes until school age to be mastered. Approximately 80% of 7.5 to 8 years old produce full passive sentences. In general, a full passive contains some form of be or got of verb with past tense marker and preposition followed by noun phrase as in the window was broken by Diego. Some passive forms do not appear until 11 years of age. The two non-reversible passives include one in which the subject is an inanimate instrument such as ball and another in which the subject is an agent such as boy. In the agentive type, the window was broken by the boy. Both are non-reversible since we cannot say the ball or boy was broken by the window. These semantic distinctions appear to be important for development of the passive form. As a group, children use about an equal number of reversible and non-reversible passives. Prior to age 4, children produce more reversible passives and with considerable word order of confusion. Children say, the boy is chased by the girl, when in fact the boy is in pursuit. Only about 50% of 5 years old can correctly interpret reversible passives. A marked increase in non-reversible passive production occurs just prior to age 8. The type of non-reversible passive that it must prominent change with age. Instrumental non-reversible passives are the most frequent non-reversible for to 13 years old. Reversible passives use by, whereas non-reversibles use with. Conjoining. Causal conjoining expands with the use of the some conjunctions. The first type is causal. For example, because, so, therefore. The second type is conditional. For example, if. The next type is disjunctive. For examples, but, or, although. The last type is temporal. For examples, when, before, after, then. The conjunction of choice for narration, however, remains and. By 11 to 14 years of age, only approximately 20% of narrative sentences begin with and. This percentage decreases to 5% under the somewhat more formal constraints of writing. Older conjunctions are more frequently used for clausal conjoining. Up to age 12, because and when predominate with if and in order to also used frequently. Even though if, so, and because are produced relatively early in the late preschool years, full understanding doesn't develop until much later. Learning to understand and use because is not easy task. To understand sentence with because, a child must comprehend not only the relationship between two events, but also their temporal sequence. This sequence is not the same as the order presented in the sentence. In both comprehension and production, the preschool child appears to follow an order of mentioned strategy. True comprehension of because doesn't seem to develop until age 7. Consistently correct comprehension of because sentence may not occur until around age 10 or 11. The long developmental period for conjunctions may be related to an interesting finding. Pragmatic factors may also affect the development of conjunctions. Children are more accurate at catching the speaker's meaning if the speaker expresses belief in the truthfulness of the utterance and if the two clauses are related positively. The conjunction because expresses both strong belief and a positive relationship, while other conjunctions express different relations. Similarly, because and if express a positive relationship between the two clauses, while although and unless express a negative relationship. In general, the more positive relationship in general, the more positive the relationship, the easier it is to comprehend the conjunction. This because is learned before if and although, which in turn are followed by unless. Even fifth graders may have difficulty understanding unless. Younger children do not understand and the appropriate pragmatic cues for disbelief and uncertainty. Therefore, they rely on syntactic cues. Embedding. By 5 years of age, most children can easily produce sentences containing all types of subordinate clauses. From this point on, development focuses on increased efficiency with which complex structures are accessed, multiple and embedded subordinate clauses, and integration of these utterances to organize and sustained discourse. Developmental change in syntactic complexity are influenced in part by intellectual stimulation and expanded knowledge. We could go so far as to say that complex thought is driving the development of complex language. Relative pronoun use is expanded with the addition of host, home, and in which. Center embedding is particularly difficult for young school-age children. Semantic role is an important factor in interpretation. If the object of a center embedding is inanimate, it's less likely to be misinterpreted than an animate object is. Comprehension of embedded clauses also seems to be based on the place and manner of the embedding. Embeddings may occur at the end of a sentence or in the center. The relative difficulty of center embedded clauses may be due to limitation in auditory working memory. As a child matures, auditory working memory is able to hold more items for longer periods of time. Working memory is significantly involved in school-age children's comprehension of complex sentences. Simple sentence comprehension doesn't seem to require extensive use of working memory. Of most importance for comprehension of complex sentences are both processing speed and control and allocation of attention. First graders rely heavily on word order to interpretation and are confused by semantic class reversals between subject and object class. By 7th grade, a child has little difficulty interpreting these sentences and relies primarily on grammatical cues. This change probably reflects child's underlying cognitive development. Morphophonemic development. Morphophonemic change are phonological or sound modifications that result when morphemes are placed together. Several rules for morphophonemic change are learned gradually throughout elementary school. One rule, usually learned by first grade, pertains to the regular plural as mentioned in chapter 9. The 5 to 6-year-old has learned the rule for S and Z, but not for S in all cases. Even in third grade, nouns ending in SK or SK and ST or ST clusters may be difficult for some students to pluralize. During the school years, a child also learns the rules for vowel shifting. Knowledge of vowel shifting is gained only gradually. A 5-year-old child doesn't understand the rules, and it's not until age 17 that most individuals learn to apply all the rules. Stress or emphasis is also learned during the school years. The stress placed on certain syllables or words reflects the grammatical function of that unit. In English, stress varies with the relationship between two words and with the words used as a noun or verb. Noun-verb pairs also differ. In the noun record, emphasis is on the first syllable, whereas the verb record is pronounced with stress on the last. Initially acquired an isolated word, pitch contours are gradually integrated into larger units. Speech production. Increased sentence length and complexity requires increased speech motor planning. Although younger children vary considerably in their movement, such as lip rounding to produce sounds, these movements may affect and extend across an entire utterance. Say the following sentence as both a statement or declarative and as a question or interrogative, but do not change the word order. John's going to the party. Note the different rhythmic or prosodic patterns in each and the different intonation. Metalinguistic abilities. A school-age child demonstrates an increasing ability to judge grammatical acceptability and to correct unacceptable sentence. Like emerging pragmatic skills, metalinguistic abilities depend on development of all aspects of language. With increased structural and semantic skills, a child is freed from the immediate linguistic context and can attend to how a message is communicated. In addition, metalinguistic skill development is related to language use, cognitive development, reading ability, academic achievement, IQ, environmental stimulation, and play. Code switching development. Bilingual speakers often exhibit code switching or shifting from one language to another, especially when both languages are used in the environment, as in the southwestern United States, in Quebec, or in sections of many major U. Individuals vary based on their proficiency in both languages. Rather than representing the integration of both grammars into a third, new grammar, code switching rules demonstrate the continuing separation of the two languages. For example, code switching occurs only when words are positioned according to the rules for the language from which the word is selected. In general, children under age 5 combine proficiency and preference decisions. A listener either knows a language or does not. Their reason. Older children make finer distinctions and may, therefore, consider their speaker more often. Their behavior reflects the developing presuppositional skills seen in school-age children. Children also identify certain people with certain languages. Although topics learned do not usually influence switching, the language of a specific group may be used when discussing that group, and code switching may signal topic change. First, it may be an aid for retention of the first language, while a second is learned. Language difference. Children who are learning English successive to having begun learning a first language may experience some difficulty in school depending on when they began to learn English. Let's discuss two specific issues: code switching among bilingual children and the prejudice some speakers of African American English may face. African American English speakers and society. In general, AAE speakers are granted shorter employment interviews, offered few positions, and offered lower paying positions than speakers of dialects with more SAE features. Apparently, this discrimination doesn't significantly affect the self-concept of AAE speakers. African American children who speak AAE seem to have a higher self-concept than those who do not. Logical thinking can be fostered by teaching children to mimic the formal speech patterns of their teachers. Children who adopt these formal patterns think logically and thus do better in reading and arithmetic. Although preschool African American children from homes using AAE do not develop all forms of the dialect, there is a marked increase in use during school age, especially from grades 3 to 5. African American children's comprehension seems to be similar for both dialects. In fact, African American students perform better at sentence completion when cued in the majority dialect. Finally, there is no difference between African American lower class and white middle class children in imitation of sentences in the majority dialect. The ability of African American children to comprehend both dialects continues to adulthood. African American adults find child speakers of both dialects equally intelligible, whereas adult majority speakers find children speakers significantly more intelligible in the majority dialect. In general, children read orally in accordance with their dialects. Among 5 to 8-year-old African American children, higher familiarity with school English encountered in academic materials and settings is associated with better reading achievement. Alright, that's all presentation from us. If you guys have any questions about the material, please type your questions on the comment box. Thank you so very much for watching. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. See ya!